flag again.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Lord, help us be passionate and friendly. Help us to be realistic in our judgments. Teach us the good so we may labor for the good. Let us never lose sight of the people who we represent.
Please remain standing so we can observe a moment of silence for our departed alderman. Thank you. Clerk, call a roll.
Mayor Stafford.
Here.
Alderman Lincoln. Here. Alderman Sahaski.
Here.
Alderman Weston.
Here.
Alderman Sherman. Here. Alderman Thompson.
Here.
Alderman Woodward.
Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Item 1.
Resolved that the Common Council minutes of July 21st, 1998 are hereby approved.
Motion?
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolved the following claims are referred to our city attorney. Notice of motion filed by Mrs. Beverly Blake. Letter of claim filed by Teresa Shirk. Notice of petitions filed by Niagara Mohawk, the NXL Group, NLX Group, Pyramid Centers, Oswego County Industrial Development Agency, LFL Realty, Dean's Food Vegetable Company, James M. Paternoster, Marcel Marceau, and LFL Realty.
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolve the city clerk's report for June 1998 in the amount of $7,668.45 is received, approved, and placed on file.
Motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Whereas the city clerk was authorized and directed to advertise receive sealed bids in his office on or before August 4th at 4 p.m. and to be publicly open at 4:15 p.m. in the council chambers. Excuse me. In accordance with specifications prepared by the Fulton Engineering Department for architectural lighting for Bullhead Point. Whereas the city clerk opened said bids and read them aloud as follows. MEC Electric, Hannibal, New York, $17,700. Knapp Electric, Fulton, New York, $16,632. And Gosh Supply, Fulton, New York, $15,460. Be it resolved that all bids are referred to Mr. Edict of the Fulton Engineering Department for his recommendation to be returned to the council at a future date.
Motion?
I'll move it. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
City clerk was authorized and directed to receive sealed bids on August 4th up to 4 p.m. and to open them at 4:15 p.m. relative for ferric chloride for the City of Fulton sewage treatment plant. Jones Chemical Incorporated, Caledonia, New York, $265 per dry ton. And Eagle Brook Incorporated, Madison, Illinois, $255 per dry ton. The Water and Sanitation Commissioner informed me that he would like to award to the low bidder being Eagle Brook, Your Honor.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Before the city clerk reads the next two items on the agenda, I'd like to make a couple of small changes. On item number 6, I would like to add to that resolution that it be sent to the Planning Commission for their further study and recommendation. Also on item number 7, I would delete refer to the Planning Commission. I've talked to Chairman Farini, and he agrees that both of those items should be handled in that way.
So item 6, you want to refer to the Planning Commission?
Right.
And item 7, we're going to delete referring it to the Planning Commission. That's not
Right.
necessary.
Right.
Okay.
Bob, do you know what ever became of the problem that we had with the existing signs?
The Welcome to Fulton signs. We met as a sign committee. We have put together 3 or 4 people that are now looking at all of our signs. Dan Romanchek from the Police Department, John Crook, myself, and Betsy Sherman-Saunders from the Chamber of Commerce. We're planning on making moves on at least 4 of those signs that need relocation.
Okay. Thanks.
Item 6 would be to refer the electronic message board to the Fulton Planning Commission.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Just to give the council and some of the other people a little background on that particular item, last year Betsy Copps called me and she said that she needed to talk to tell somebody where to go in one of the parks, and she was unable to tell him what park she was in. So I looked at all of our parks and discovered that none of our parks have signs in them. So I started a committee, and I've given a packet of information to the council. Started a committee to look into the possibility of signs in our parks. At that time, we didn't make any kind of changes. We had to put it in the budget. The 1997 council did budget some money for parks. At the same time that this was happening, I was observing that we had an awful lot of events at the community center and the War Memorial, and I felt that there was a need for a community event sign that would indicate what kind of events were going on there, and also it could be a sign that could be used for many of the other coming events in the city, the Chocolate Fest, the Italian American Fest, all of those kind of different events, and it would also serve as an activity sign for any event that was happening. So that's what started the ball rolling, and we've looked at this message center, and I think we just need to fine-tune it a little bit. We've heard some things that maybe the sign needed to have some corrections to it that would make it it's a one-time thing. We want it to be good, so that's why it's being referred to the Planning Commission.
Next item?
Do you have a cost per sign, Mike, or Bob?
On item 6?
On item 7?
Yes, we do. $2,000.
How much?
For item 7, $2,000. It'll be in the,
That'd be for 6 signs.
he's putting, it's for 6 signs. He's going to put it in the resolution.
Resolved that the city erect signs at the entrances to the city of Fulton indicating the home of the Congressional Medal of Honor winner, 1944, Corporal Charles W. Barrett, at a cost of $2,000.
Before we vote on that resolution, to give the council, I know that myself and John and Ron Woodward are very familiar with what happened with the changes over at the War Memorial and the rededication of the War Memorial and the naming of the drive around the lake that was then referred to as Corporal C.W. Barrett Drive. one of the people that has been so instrumental in making those changes over at the War Memorial and a tremendous proponent of the veterans is Ken Patrick, and he's here tonight, and he'll give you a little background on our famous citizen. Ken?
Honorable Mayor and members of the Common Council, first I'd like to thank the Common Council and the Mayor, and even go back a little and thank Don Bullard for what we have over there. The War Memorial is really a place of honor. And especially if you haven't had the opportunity yet to go into the Veterans Memorial Room to see what has taken place in there, I advise you to take the time and go spend a little time over there. During the Chocolate Fest, we had about between 300 and 400 people went through it. During Memorial Day, we had very few because the main building wasn't open, and I think was part of the problem at that. But I wish to thank you very much for this, because it's been a long time coming, something like that, and it's something that we've got there that's going to be left for the future generations to realize what really took place. And I think we got a movie coming up that's going to hit home with a lot of people. And Carlton W. Barrett was born in Fulton, and he moved to Saratoga Springs later on. His father had a grocery store there. And from there, he joined the Army at 24 years old. He was one of the hundreds of thousands that invaded on D-Day, that went into France, and some of the different points. Was just one of the men on one of those barges that went ashore that day. And Carlton Barrett barge was stuck as it landed, and at that time the German shells were doing direct hits on most of the barges that were coming ashore. And Carlton Barrett and the men scrambled out of the barge, and many of the men were hit at that time. They were in neck-deep water, and if any of you has ever been in the service and fully loaded with a pack in neck-deep water, you'll understand what we're saying. He made it to shore, but before going to shore, he realized many of his companions around him had been hit and were floating on the water. And under heavy fire, he kept grabbing these men and taking them to a barge where they could be taken to a hospital ship. And this was still in neck-deep water. And he kept this up for quite a while, even after he was hit 4 times with shrapnel in the foot, both legs, and in the hip. He then went to the beach with his lieutenant, and the lieutenant was hit. He took over and ran messages through heavy fire up and down the beach before finally he himself was taken to a hospital ship. We are fortunate, I think, for the city to have such a person. On D-Day, again, we have to think of hundreds of thousands of men going ashore. Only 4 men received the Congressional Medal of Honor on that day. There's only 133 living at that time in the whole country. So you can imagine, when we start thinking of the towns and the villages and the cities all through the United States, how many there is and how many Congressional Medal of Honor winners there are. There are a few cities, if you have driven around the United States, you will see at the entrance of the city where they have honored their Congressional Medal of Honor winner with that name, the home of the Congressional Medal of Honor winner. And that's what, with Bob here, and I have to thank Bob, because Bob is everywhere we go when it comes to veterans. I want to say, when Memorial Day, he follows us through the cemetery. Whenever we go anywhere, Bob is there. I only wish the public would take notice and pay a little bit more attention, because all of us are getting older now, and it seems like the younger generation are not paying too much attention to the soldiers and what freedom that they have today, because it was earned by their blood. Carlton Barrett died in a veterans hospital. He died like quite a few Congressional Medal of Honor winners. Couldn't stand too much publicity. I also was familiar with Pappy Boynton of the Black Sheep Squadron, and he went the same way. They drank himself really almost to death. His daughter, who lives in California, found him on the street after being missing for 2 or 3 years and put him in the hospital where he died. That honor I think does belong at the entrance of our city for the future generations. And I think there was a couple changes on that. We were going to put the date was going on there. And the Congressional Medal of Honor, I don't know if you realize, it's the highest honor given to anyone in the service at any time from the Civil War on back. And it looks something like that. And they're going to redo that a little bit. That is what the Congressional Medal of Honor looks like, really. And so again, I think that it's fitting that we have him on our sign at the entrance to the city. I don't think that, somebody mentioned to me the other day, and it kind of bothered me, but I didn't give a remark back. One of our Fulton citizens said, well, we should put somebody local on our sign if we want to do that. And I said, well, Carlton W. Barrett is local, and he's got the highest award that the United States of America can give, and I don't think that anyone in our city could fit that description, and I think that maybe most of you will agree with that. I'd like to say that while I'm up here, that in the War Memorial, I need another showcase. We have 3 showcases filled, one with all-American things. I have all kinds at home now given me. I'm trying to figure a place to place them. We have Japanese and we have German souvenirs that are in all of these cases. I also want to tell you that the police department has a record of every pistol and rifle that's in there and a number, and the place is wired now so that everything is secure. I hope 50 years from now that the next generation of aldermen and mayors will carry on the tradition and keep the War Memorial the way it is, and keep it updated and keep that room there so the public will know what did take place 50 years ago. We're only about a year away from the Korean War, when you think about it. It was 5 years after the Second World War. And so I hope there's some form of a celebration for that. That's another reason I need another case. We've got quite a few items from the Korean War now. Also, if you haven't been in there, we start with we have from the Civil War, people from Fulton from the Civil War through every war, from the Civil War to the First World War to the Second World War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, right up to Desert Storm is in place over there in the War Memorial. So we've tried to cover everything. And it's funny when we look back at, I've seen a Civil War musket I still got my eye on. Maybe someday we might get that, so that will be over in the War Memorial too. But I would like to really thank the city of Fulton for what they have done. And as Bob has said before, that there's 3 aldermen here that were present when the Lakeshore Road around the lake was dedicated in honor of him, which the only thing that I cannot understand, when Mayor Rowley was mayor, when they had a party here and everything, that they didn't think of something like that over 50 years ago to honor him at that time. They had a party here. They had 200 in attendance at that time, and some of the top people in Fulton were in attendance at that dinner. I know I was in the South Pacific at that time, so it didn't, when that took place. But so you see, it is very fitting that our city recognize a person such as Carlton W. Barrett, and with honor. I think that we should. And again, I have to give credit to you aldermen and to the mayors that have the insight to realize that we do need something to send into the future for our young people. And I wish to thank you very much. And I know that when this takes place, if it does, we'll take some pictures of it, that his daughter in California and his sister always wanted to come back to Fulton to see the War Memorial and things, but she's getting up into her 80s and doesn't think that she'll be able to make it, but she'll gladly, I send her a picture so she'll see what's going on. I have sent her pictures of everything that we have done here now. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
I think everybody got a copy of what the sign might look like, and this is the type of lettering that will go on it. So it's pretty impressive. I think it's appropriate. I'd like to move that resolution.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item.
Resolved, the executive assistant to the mayor be authorized to attend the New York State Conference of Mayors Main Street meeting August 17th through August 19th in Canandaigua at a cost of $700. Be it further resolved, the city chamberlain transfer said amount from the A1910 account to the executive assistant's account to cover said cost.
I'll move it.
We have a motion?
Alderman Thompson.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Resolved, the city clerk, city chamberlain, the mayor, executive assistant to the mayor be authorized to attend the New York State Conference of Mayor Fall Training School from October 19th through October 23rd in Saratoga Springs. Be it further resolved, the city chamberlain transfer $1,600 from the A1910 account, of which $800 be transferred to the mayor's account and $800 to the executive assistant to the mayor's account to cover said cost.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Do any of the council members have any items to bring before the council?
I'd like
Yes,
to know
sir.
if, is Joe going to read the resolution?
We're going to hold off till the next meeting so we can have the family here.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I've received a letter from Michael Bragman that I'd like to introduce into the minutes of this common council meeting. I'd like to have City Clerk Joe Tetro read that to us, and it'll give us insight into legislation for wireless communication towers. So I'd like to have him read that, please.
July 20th, 1998. Mr. John Lincoln Jr., Alderman, City of Fulton, 501 Meadowbrook Circle, Fulton, New York. Dear John, thank you for contacting my office regarding the siting of wireless telecommunication towers in New York State. Ron Osram of my staff has informed me of his conversation with you. As you know, this is a critical issue facing New York and the nation, an issue that will help define the relationship between society and technology in the next century. In 1996, President Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act. This federal legislation provided for comprehensive telecommunications reforms to promote competition among local phone companies, long-distance carriers, and cable providers by breaking down the legal and functional barriers between these formerly distinct industries. The legislation included cellular transmission towers, while the Act preserved local government powers to regulate the placement, construction, and modification of wireless cellular telecommunication towers and facilities. It has also placed restrictions on the ability of localities to prohibit the placement of towers. With the increasing number of towers, more and more citizens across the state are becoming aware of this issue. In fact, the number of cellular towers in the United States is expected to increase from 40,000 to over 115,000 by the year 2000, 400,000 by year 2005. In many communities, residents have complained that the towers constitute a form of visual pollution that reduce property values. In addition, a growing number of people have raised concerns regarding the deterioration of scenic vistas as other environmental problems. The industry has sought to construct their towers as soon as possible, as they may have paid billions for federal licenses that include many requirements for the service to be in place. In 1996, 107 companies spent a combined $18 billion on licenses to offer new wireless systems. They have expressed frustration in their ability to work with localities and the lack of clear standards across the state. One locality may require zoning board approval, another planning board review, and another no review at all. To address these situations, I have introduced legislation designed to improve the planning and placement of such towers. I also held a public hearing on the impact of cellular and PCS technology and the need for a statewide strategy to minimize the adverse impact of this new technology. The legislation remained in committee at the end of session as the bill continued to be refined. I have enclosed a copy of the bill for your review. Should you require additional information, please do not hesitate to contact Ron Osram of my staff at 518-455-4567. Best wishes, very truly yours, Michael J. Bragman, Majority Leader.
And Mayor, I'd like to give this to you. This is what he said he was sending. And we could pass it on to our committee to put some legislation together.
You going to read that into the minutes, too?
I make a motion, Joe reads it right now.
We definitely don't have enough time.
And then explain it.
I will get this to the committee.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Your Honor, I had a couple calls this week. We're back to the sidewalk issue. We're enforcing, I guess, this ban on parking on sidewalks. And what I want to know, I have a question. Number one, in areas where there are no sidewalks, is it illegal to park in the right-of-way? And I didn't know the answer to that. I mean, I know up by me there's no sidewalks, in the Third Ward there's no sidewalks. Is it illegal for people to park in right-of-way where a sidewalk would have been? The same thing on 176 coming to the city, there's no sidewalks. I have one particular place on Erie in 4th Street that several years ago the city, back before we had the changes in the zoning, the city issued rental permits for 4-family apartment with absolutely no parking except where they paved over the sidewalk. And since then, at one time there was parking on both sides of the street, now there's only parking on one side of the street, so they're either going to have to move the place out of there or sell the cars. We also have several grocery stores. Margaritas down by me, they paved over the sidewalk. Chubby's, Bruce's, Dentist. Are we going to enforce these on all of them, or just the residentials? Or see, what we're doing is reaching back into the past when people were given permission to do that. Now, are we saying because the dentist couldn't put his in, we're going to reach back with the long arm and no one's grandfathered? I think we need to take a good look at this because...
This had nothing to do with the dentist issue. This was brought up by a constituent.
Yeah, I know that. I know
Meeting
that.
that said that she had problems out walking and the
I
cops
know
were
that.
blocking sidewalks.
I know that, Your Honor. I know
So-
that. I understand that, but what I'm saying is, we have a problem that I mean, I can see it where there's a sidewalk where a person has a place to park in the driveway, but they park in the sidewalk, and you see that all over the city. They have a whole driveway, but yet they park in the sidewalk. Or where they could park in the street. But what I'm saying is, what are we going to do with these people that we allowed them to do that? We have several businesses like that right now that have paved over a sidewalk, so if a person comes down the sidewalk and hits a parking lot, they go on the road. Are we going to tell them they got to put the sidewalks back in and quit parking in there right away? I mean, we can't just do it to a couple residences and not do it to the rest of them. That's what I'm getting at. Like I said, we got a tavern that's doing the same thing. Or we got several of them, you know. I think we need to look at that and see. I mean, to me, and David's the only one that can answer this, and maybe he couldn't, I don't know, because he wasn't here when a lot of this happened. I wasn't here when a lot of this happened. But when we come out with zoning laws that change stricter in an R1 area, we're still grandfathering the 4-family units, even though today they couldn't put a 4-family unit there. And the only time they revert back is when they're vacant for a year.
Right.
So if we allow them to have them and let them park, knowing full well there's no place to park, do we have any obligation to them now, or just do we reach back and say, well, you've been doing it for 25 years, but now you can't do it anymore? Because there's no place to park if they don't park where they're parked.
That's a good point.
You're asking about the issue.
Well, the thing of it is, we're getting into it now, and I had an individual call me and say, hey, what about the places that I mentioned to you? Because they're driving around saying, now I can't park my car anywhere. What are we going to do with the rest of them, or is it just us? And I don't know what to tell them. Is there any grandfather laws to these places that were allowed to do this 20 years ago or 25 years ago?
Well, if they were allowed to do it, it's illegal. It doesn't mean it's grandfathered. If they're allowed to park on the sidewalk.
Well, you don't issue somebody a rental unit for 4 apartments with no driveways, and you expect that they're not going to park their cars.
Is the parking requirement part of the rental permit?
Yeah, I think so. It is at this point. I don't know. When they issued them, I have no idea if it was. See, that was one of the problems we had, Your Honor, even on Oneida Street years ago, when the old family homes went and the kids sold the houses out, they put 3 or 4 apartments in, and all the sidewalks on Oneida Street are shot. And that's the reason on the north side. But right now, I know I've got a problem. I got a guy that I can remember the last 2 or 3 police chiefs, you being one, we used to have to issue him a thing in the wintertime because if he didn't park on the sidewalk, he had to sell his car. He has no driveway. And the house was built right so close to the road, it's in the right-of-way on a corner. There's no, it was built when they had horses and buggies and they had a carriage house somewhere,
I know in the past, on a number of occasions,
Yeah.
we have allowed people to park in the right-of-way.
In the wintertime.
In the wintertime.
Yeah.
We have allowed that. I don't know if there is a specific ordinance against it in summertime.
Yeah.
I guess one short answer to your Honor, just because somebody's grandfather to have a multifamily doesn't mean that the city's saying that they can park there.
Okay.
The landlord may have to say, you can't, if you live here, you can't have a car.
Well, the only thing I'm concerned about is if we're going to do this and reach back, that we do it evenly. And I'll tell you, we got our work cut out for us.
I think it'd be more of a problem to do that. I don't know, I have Tim Henry here who lives on First Street, and he has a situation where there's 3 cars in the family, and there's just there's no place to park. We have the street itself was originally designed to be for parking on the other side of the street. In fact, we have parking on the north side, but not on the south side.
Yeah.
And so he just has no place to park. I'm just wondering if it isn't more of a problem to actively enforce this as opposed to the people that are concerned about not being able to walk on the sidewalks.
Yeah. Well, I'm concerned about...
I think years ago people
Yeah.
walked on sidewalks.
Right.
I think the majority of the people are driving, and there isn't as much walking as there were 30 years ago. But I mean, that's not necessarily the answer to
Well, it
by saying
aggravates
not
me
enough people are walking.
It aggravates me to see somebody walking with children and they have to walk in the street because somebody won't get off the sidewalk. That is a concern. The only thing is, I'm saying, we're going to have a problem because I think we're going to have to do it with everyone, or we can't.
Yeah, see, now, on First Street, there's sidewalks on the west side and not on the east side. So the kids that live on the east side that have to walk to Lanigan School have to walk in the road.
Right. Yeah, the same thing on Whitaker Road. But what I'm saying is, what do we do with those kids? If somebody decides, can they park in the right-of-way even though a sidewalk isn't there? I've always told the kids to walk on the right-of-way across on the edge of the lawn because it's city right-of-way. Even though there's not a sidewalk there, get out the street and walk, What do I tell them? I mean, I've been getting calls on it. I say, hey, you can't park on the sidewalk.
Well, do you want to try to address this with legislation?
Yeah, I think what we need to do, Your Honor, is all the aldermen or something, go around their wards and find the places that are like that and the problems unique to it and see what we can do about it. Because like I said, you've got several businesses that, and this one fellow said to me, you're just going to pick on us or you're going to get the businesses too? I said, well, I can't answer that. I would hope that we do it evenly if we're going to do it.
Definitely.
See, that's a problem with something like this. The enforcement, if you're to enforce it, you have to enforce it with everybody, and each person has a different situation, which
Right.
causes some kind of a need for flexibility.
Right.
And it's hard to, how do you tell your police department not to enforce what we already have in the
I
book?
don't know. Can we write a law that says if you have ample parking, you can't park on a sidewalk? I mean, because that's where you run into problems if you go to the neighborhood. You see people that have a driveway and they park on the sidewalk anyway. And some of the businesses got whole parking lots, but they want to squeeze 4 or 5 more cars in. And let you go in there and you'll see the parking lot is not completely full. It's more of a convenience than it is a necessity, is what I mean.
I would think that the legislative committee should look at the existing legislation
Okay.
and see if,
It might be helpful to know how many you've got, because we've got a lot of them. You
Oh,
know.
yes.
And I'm, you know, Your Honor, I know it's a tough problem. We've probably skirted it for a lot of years for the very reason, but I'm getting calls on it, and I don't know what to tell them. I mean, I can tell you that one apartment house, there's 4 apartments, and he was able to get a drive on the 4th Street side for one apartment, provided they only have one vehicle. But the other one's on the Erie Street side, it's right in the corner there where old Tony's store was. And back when Tony Sincata had that store there 35 years ago, John could tell you, they parked there then. And now they can't park there. Yeah. I mean, that's been going on for 40 years. Now all of a sudden they can't park there. And they can't park in the street because you used to be able to park both sides of Erie Street, and about 8 or 10 years ago, they removed parking on one side, so there's no place to go. And they're getting tickets. They already got tickets. They've already got tickets, too.
all right, I think we should, in fact, I'll refer this subject to the Legislative Committee
Okay.
to review the current legislation.
It's already on the schedule.
Yeah.
is.
Well, I'd like the councilmen, if they got a chance to go through their wards and find out everybody that's got that problem, that's paved over a sidewalk or that parks over the sidewalk, and I think you'll find most people do, quite a few places.
Tim Henry gave me a call, and he lives on West First Street. I'd like him to address the council if he'd like to.
The problem, I guess, we're having is, you know, they say with people parking on the sidewalks and not having access to get by or anything else. Well, I got this warning the other morning on my daughter's car, and we have 3 cars in our driveway because all 3 of us work. And a few years ago, when they widened West First Street, we had parking on the other side of the street.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, about 3 years ago, they decided to take this parking away from us. They come along and put no parking signs all the way from Cedar Street down to Curtis Street. Joe Crisafulli lives right across from me. He got a ticket last year for parking in front of his house. And I know he I guess, talked with Bob. He was real concerned about it, and so was I. And I mean, if you have a company come to your house, you get no place for them to park.
Right.
You know, it's really kind of irate. I mean, if I park on the sidewalk, I'm parked 2 wheels on, so at least there's room to get by on the sidewalk still, you know, one way or the other. Maybe it's not the full sidewalk, and that's exactly what happened with this case. My daughter's 2 wheels happened to be on the sidewalk, and she got this warning. And then the next morning, it kind of made me a little mad, so I went up and down the street, and I saw 27 violations within 3 streets. Like I say, if we're going to do this, let's do it for everybody, or let's make it fair for everybody. You know, like you said, there's people paving over their sidewalks, you know, and making it a parking lot. I don't know what we've got to do.
Some places.
Well, a lot of residences too, not just businesses. You know, they're doing the same thing. So, and I considered the same thing if that's what it takes. But I went down to the police department today and I got a copy of the V&T law and to see what it said. And it says you cannot park on the sidewalk or on a crosswalk. It doesn't say that, you know, anything else. It doesn't stipulate as far as blocking the sidewalk or anything else. It's just that you cannot park on a sidewalk. That's according to the state V&T law. Whether they have a different city ordinance that's going to be applied or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we do, don't we, Mike?
Well, I went down to the police department downstairs and asked them to give me a copy of any ordinance, and they couldn't come up with anything but this.
Okay.
So,
I think they're writing under the state law.
okay, well, that's, and I agree with, you know, at least you gave us a warning, you know, to let us know, but something has to be done with the city, and my concern is West First Street, where I live, is to try to get that parking back on the other side of the street for us.
When did they take that up, huh?
Bob, do you know when that parking was taken out and why? It was in your ward?
I checked, I called and talked to the traffic lieutenant at the time, and there was a concern about the amount of traffic on First Street and the amount of turns that would be affected by from Cedar down to Curtis. It was just a visibility thing. Now, we can relook at that. We can have Sergeant Romanchek look at that and see if that's a possibility to have that, because it is wider through there. It's wider on the other end, and they're parking on the
Yes.
north side. So maybe on this end, we could get some parking space on the south
Yeah,
side.
from Cedar Street on up through towards the old KBC building, there's parking on side of that side, our side of the street. Now, it's not marked as a two-lane on southbound on 48 going down to Curtis Street, so either it should be marked as a two-lane on that side or marked for no
You
parking.
mean where we made the street wider, they took parking off?
That's right.
That was never a two-lane, that was never designed for a two-lane.
No, it was,
Absolutely not.
No, it was,
it was
I have no idea why they did that.
widened with intention to give parking.
Right.
But then all of a sudden they decided to take the parking away. And if they were going to do it, I would say at least mark it off so, you know, or mark it as a two-lane highway.
Because that goes right into 48, and that would be a problem. I mean, it's...
I'll have the traffic department look at that.
just see Scott and have a work order done for a
Yeah.
traffic study on that. Sure,
Okay, thanks, Tim.
we can address that.
Okay.
Anyone else?
It's already done. John sent it on.
Set. Anyone in the audience?
This is open to any subject, right?
Yes.
Well, my name is Al Squitieri. Gentlemen, councilman, Esquire Hawthorne, I mean that in the best sense of the word. Your Honor, Joey Tetro, you've been sitting in that chair for 102 years, you never get recognized. You probably don't want to be recognized. Now keep your head down sitting next to these targets. I want to clarify some remarks I made at the last council meeting about the cellular towers. Apparently, at least one alderman misunderstood me or missed the point I was making. Right off, I want to say that I realize that cellular antennas are not as dangerous as overhead power lines or TV antennas or radio antennas. And when I was talking about government telling us what was safe and what wasn't, and I named X-rays and so on, I wasn't comparing the two. The point I was making was just because government says something is safe doesn't make it so. And I named those things to prove the point. They tell us X-rays are safe, and they tell you to take a deep breath, and then they run behind a lead shield. Government is telling the dentist not to tell your patients that mercury fillings are harmful. If we find out you're doing that, we're going to pull your license. The same government is telling us that the dentist can't put that mercury extraction in the trash because it can't go to the landfill. It's toxic. It's okay to put it in my mouth, but don't put it in the landfill. Then we're told microwave, which used to be radar ovens, are safe. One alderman said, Al doesn't know what he's talking about. Microwaves are not dangerous. Well, they are. They come with warning labels. They tell us to take these precautions, be careful, because if you don't do this, it can be harmful. I recommend you want to get rid of a spouse, just place this thing within a foot of their head and find out how long it takes to make their brains into mashed potatoes. But I believe microwave ovens are a hazard. They also told us that nuclear energy was safe. We don't know what to do with the harmful, dangerous nuclear waste, but we keep making it. And I want to give you a local example. In 84, 85, about 15 years ago, federal government, state government, city government insisted our water was safe, our drinking water. They said it met the minimum standard. But thankfully, we had a half a dozen housewives who got tired of rusty laundry. And they went to the city and said it's unsafe. Now, these housewives, led by Sandy Weston, didn't believe our government. And the city was very, very adamant about it. In fact, I wrote a commentary 15 years ago, and I got all the information that was needed, and they had documentation. Well, they said publicly and in writing that these people were, quote, troublemakers, instigators, and fearmongers. There's that word again, fearmongers. Well, they didn't back down. And these fearmongers had 5 contaminated wells shut down. Now, what have we done if Sandy Weston and company backed off? There again, government said it was safe. Doesn't make it so. Now, Now, if you allow me to, I want to draw a larger picture and then come into a smaller point where it affects Fulton. Why do we have this problem with placement of cellular phones, cellular antennas? I believe that down in Washington, we have what is called lobbying. And I believe our senators and our representatives are being bribed. I don't believe that lobbying is nothing else but bribery. And they're guaranteeing these senators re-election if they vote in their particular need or for their need. And it's my opinion, it's just my opinion, but I believe the biggest lobbyists we have, for one, is the Nuclear Regulatory Agency. They're looking out for the nuclear companies. The FDA is looking out for the pharmaceuticals. The AMA is looking out for the medical doctor. The FCC is looking out for cable and cellular, and so on and so forth. And I don't know if you believe all this stuff or not. I don't believe they're there to look out for us. They're supposed to be, but I don't think they're doing it. So what happens is this idiot senator who wants to be reelected, because with reelection you get power and money, and he's giving them everything they want, including what is unsafe for us. Another example, federal government allowed for a 9th compact in this country. And most of you know, I think, what a compact is. It's 2 or 3 states agreeing together to dump their nuclear garbage in another state. In this case, Maine, Vermont, and Connecticut are spending $50 million to dump it down in Texas, a little southeastern city or town by the name of Sierra Blanco. It's about 15 miles from the Mexican border. The Mexican government is not seeing white, they're seeing red. They don't want it there. And the reason it was chosen is because in Sierra Blanca, there's just a few hundred ignorant, poor Mexicans. And what that's telling me, anyway, is that the people in Vermont, Maine, and Connecticut are more important than the people down in southeast Texas. These same senators, this same Congress is telling us, you will have cellular antennas whether you like it or not, and we have to accept it. My argument is this: for the last 4 or 5 years, on our level, we've had different aldermen, male, female, Democrat, Republican, makes no difference, coming and going. One alderman from the beginning said no to this whole thing, and he's still saying no, and I thank John Lincoln for that. But I have a picture in my mind of first, second, and third aldermen, whoever they happen to be then or now, carrying this great big antenna tower on their shoulders during the night. And they're carrying it across the river from the Batavia Avenue to the east side. And the strangest thing about that picture is 4th, 5th, and 6th Ward aldermen are helping them carry it. Now they're ready to put it up on this water tower, and the lights come on, and they half a dozen residents catching with their pants down. They say, we don't want it here. So now can you picture 5 aldermen or 6 aldermen running from ward to ward trying to put this thing down someplace? And everywhere they go, residents are saying, we don't want it here. At the same time, federal government says you're going to put it there somewhere, and then you get the cellular company saying, you're going to put it down someplace or we're going to sue you. Now, this is the company that says they are neighborly, they care about us, they're concerned about us, they love us. It's like telling your kids, I love you, I adore you, I care about you, I'm worried about you, I want you to hug and kiss me, I'm going to beat you with a stick. That's what they're telling us. So you guys have a very difficult job here. And I can recall, and records will show, that the common council gave it to the planning board gave it to the zoning board, and the zoning board gave it back to the council. No one wants to handle this hot potato, but we're going to have to deal with it. Now, we have given it to the environmental people, and they're going to sit down and study it. And my request is, think very carefully before you pick a third site, before you have to back down again. And one of our aldermen wrote a letter this week in the Monday paper, and he listed all the people that are on the zoning and the planning commissions. And he told us that they're there 14, 18, 20, 24 years. And I don't know if that's telling me that whatever their decision is, I have to live with because they've been there so long they know what they're talking about. That's not necessarily so. Longevity doesn't give us intelligence, nor does it make everything they do right. So what I'm asking is, and I want to thank the alderman that wrote it for the names, because now I know who's responsible for the last 20 years, for where Fulton has come, and what kind of shape we're in, good or bad. Now I know who I can thank and give the responsibility to. So I'm going to ask the council and whoever is on the commission for the Environmental Commission, I am here not only to, I hope it's not taken as criticism, but to give suggestions, but I also want to offer my help. If I can do anything in my little way, I want to help do whatever I can. In closing, you have a heck of a job ahead of you. And it's not a matter of we don't want it in my neighborhood, but it's okay in the other guy's neighborhood. And it can't be that way. As far as I'm concerned, I think John Lincoln is too. I'd rather not have any nuclear waste or cellular antennas, but we're stuck with it. We have to do something about it. So, good luck. Thank you for the time, Your Honor.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Al. Thanks, Al.
Anyone else from the audience? Someone else? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll have it, Your Honor.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.